Well, I just finished putting it together and piecing what I wanted to be a part of I guess, my own personal release for Galaxis. I just got done putting all that together. And yeah, this is my swan song, I guess. This is me saying thank you to pretty much everybody that has shown interest or, wants to give it a shot, will give it a shot. Anybody that watches it with a critical eye, anybody that watches what I do, giving everything an earnest chance. And yeah, this has been a long time coming. I've wanted to do a longer project for a long time ever since I finished Upon Cobbled Streets. I really wanted to make that into something, I don't know. Yeah, I just wanted to make I didn't want to make that into something. I wanted to make a new thing that was just overall comprehensively a unit. I wanted something to function together. I wanted to create a symphony of words. I wanted to create something that was tantamount to, like, I don't know, my own ideals on writing, my own ideals on, expression, my own ideals, like what I think should be what. And yeah, I just think that this is a good way to put this together. It's the first version. It needs more revision. It needs more, um, it needs a tender eye looking over it. But for now, it's readable. You can read it and you can examine everything, right? And there is nothing that I would change about the whole process. I wish I had more time to, seriously a lot to it, but a monumental task like this just it takes a lot, and there are people that do there are people that do longer projects, and there are people that do just insane stuff, and like it's just incredible to me that like there are people that dedicate their life to doing this. So I definitely have a new perspective on, I don't know, just authorship in general. And I don't know, this is a bucket list item. I get to exist in a world where I say I wrote a book, something of substantial volume, something of substantial content. And yeah, I'm overall generally pleased with my inclusions of self, my inclusions of the world around me, my inclusions of what I know of plot, grammar, things like that, elements, modes of writing. I wanted to experiment with pretty much anything, really. Like, I wanted to experiment, especially in the second half, I wanted to be extremely experimental with what I included in my writing. But yeah, this is just, it's an incredible thing to be able to, like, say that I created something and make it accessible to anybody that wants to access it. And to me, I wouldn't say that the accessibility is the most important thing. I think that for me, the most important thing was preserving my ideals on writing and whatnot. But, like, accessibility and making sure, like, if anyone could go into any time, they could see that this is what I was doing. This is how I was thinking, that there were even people thinking this way. And it's not orthodox, it's hardly like reinventing the wheel, but it's not orthodox. I had some things that were product of my own doing and my own creativity, and for that opportunity I'm extremely grateful, because few people throughout the course of history, throughout the course of time, have been able to pursue projects generally with the kind of liberty that I have. I'm not guided by a hand of financial intrigue or the demands of, corporations, or the demands of, needing to take care of myself through literature. I don't have those stresses. I just get to do shit. And that's incredible. And there was one time I was writing a short story, and like after I finished it, I was like, I think I want to do more. I think I want to amalgamate something. I'd like to write a novel eventually. Like to write a 50,000 50,000 word novel. And I think I think that's feasible now, because I've done more than that. Like, I've written 75,000 words, and to me, having to come up with new ideas and having to come up with, characters and a sort of, you know, consistent, like, trailblazing, where I need to create new characters. They need to have plots, they need to have motives, they need to have origins, they need to have backgrounds. It really chisels at this, like, really difficult part of writing a story, where you need to, like, just develop and grab the attention. Like, it definitely requires a sort of focus, a sort of attentiveness, a sort of intention. And yeah, that I think it's great that I was able to exercise myself in this way. And I have no delusions of perfection. I have no delusions of this being a masterpiece, but I am not ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say I gave it a shot. And yeah, so the first half is supposed to be stories for the sake of stories. Um, definitely concepts in there. Yeah, there's characters, there's certain things I wanted to explore. But the second half is more experimental. I think I say in the Hedapelagic foreword where, yeah, I think I say in the Hedapelagic foreword where, Epipelagic was, made to be read, Hedapelagic was made to be written. And what I mean by that, I don't know if I explore this more, but what I do mean by that is that, an author and the reader are one and the same, right? You put yourself in the shoes of the author every time you read his work, or her work, or their work, or whosoever's work. And you do that because you only have the signifiers and the signs in your own life. I use trees as an example, but if, say, say, um, like, I go outside, right? I live somewhere with deer, and I'm like, I saw an animal outside, I'm gonna think of the wildlife in my immediate area. Well, that's gonna apply to everybody, right? Like, I don't think of kangaroos, I don't think of, minks, I don't think of, bison, I don't think of buffalo, I don't think of oryxes, I don't think of wildebeest, I don't think of gemsbok, well, gemsbok or oryxes, but you get my point. But, those people that live around those things they're going to imagine those things. Like, and with that comes a whole slew of interpretations. Like, I am thankful I live in an arboreal ecosystem, and there are dangerous animals that live, like, around me. Like, there are coyotes, there are bears, but they're hardly frightening, in a regard where it's like, the bears, they're just black bears, right? Are they Olympic black? No, they're not Olympic. What the fuck am I talking about? No, they're just black bears, right? Black bears, regular coyotes, canis, uh, I don't remember. They're coyotes, right? And there are bobcats and stuff like that, yeah, and just little things like that. There's snakes, there's rattlesnakes, but, like, I don't associate animals with things that can harm me. Now, someone that's living in India, like, anywhere in India, like, I'm trying to remember where tigers live, but if you live near, um, is it Delhi? Is it Delhi? Is it Hyderabad? I'm not sure. But yeah, there are tigers or elephants or like these, and the ecosystem is a lot harsher, it's a rainforest, like a true rainforest, so like that could be a negative thing. So yeah, I think like painting a picture of exactness with something other than characters because we're constantly in contact with other people all the time, but you know ecosystems not always, right? And customs not always. So I'm trying to, integrate things. I've got little bits of the Hungarian language, or not Hungarian, the Finnish language. I've got little bits of the, German language. Um, I've got a little bit of Vietnamese. Just trying to, I don't know, expose people to things. And I take a firm stance on my social progressivism in the second half, right? Like, my social progressivism is kind of a part of who I am, like not even in a political way, but like in a way that it's like I think that all people deserve to be treated with dignity, and privacy is one of the utmost human rights. Like, there are gay men, there's, gender ambiguity, these things that like I think should be more mainstays of literature because they're not taboo, they're not unusual, especially not now, right? Like this, I don't know, this morphological characteristic of a lot of writing in recent past even hasn't had that Edith Wharton quality, that Simone de Beauvoir quality, that like where we explore things like, I don't know, just standard plots, but with this like tinge of the dichotomies of humans, like the spectrums of human identities, things like that. And those are natural. Those are extremely natural. Like the men in Oriad being homosexual largely isn't a part of the plot. It's part of their character, right? It doesn't guide anything. It's just who they are, right? And it doesn't need to be, right? Hammy being a Jamaican, his blackness isn't a part of, it's not a part of his character. Or it is part of his character, but it's not part of like what guides him. He's just a good person trying to live through World War II, right? He's a Londoner, right? And yeah, I mean the same goes for the first portions, like the the character in Peacemakers. He's just a lonely guy, I guess, right? And his, I don't know, I don't want to say misanthropy, but his, I don't know, dejection, his withdrawal to, I don't know, just being confined with his horse and, being a borderland man, I guess, this frontiersman. Um, I don't think that's like his whole Spanish speaking thing, or like he speaks Spanish. I think his last name's like De La Cruz, or something like that. But um that's not his identity isn't anything to be, ashamed of, or whatever. Just focus on the story. But I'm not going to be afraid of putting things like that in there, you know, at the risk of, you know, breaking the, you know, normalcy or whatever. There are all sorts of relations, there are all sorts of people in my books because that's how people are. We're not cut and dry. We're not. My characters are hardly a representation of me most of the time. Like the narrator and antecessor, or I don't know, the the character in the tower, I guess, are like animi, animuses. I think it's animi, um, of me, but they also aren't written to be like me. Like, it's not a physical representation of me. It's, you can put yourself in there. You can be in the uh you can be in your own shoes if you want. And the you in peacekeepers is, you know, maybe not you, but maybe you can take either the side of the questioner, the interrogator, in the first person, right? The person asking you the question, or you can be you. You know, why do you live this, I don't know, explorative, vagrant lifestyle? Why do you constantly thrill seek? Why do you constantly, want to be away from home? These are things that the character gets asked, but it can apply to you. But if you take maybe more my side, where I'm a sedentary person, I'm very sessile. Um, like you might take my side. You might be me, right? And that's great. And I never wanted to. I throughout my writing, I never wanted to insult the intelligence of my um. I never wanted to insult the intelligence of my readers, and that's extremely important to me. So, yeah, taking sides, being writing the kind of stuff that I want to write, but also like not insulting my readers. If you want to explore something, explore something. There's a reason I don't give a lot of answers sometimes, like, and I think that's great. I think having that creative liberty is extremely important to me. Furthermore, though, like, this is hardly the last thing I'll do. And the same goes with music. I've retired the Cascade name, but I want to get back to writing sheet music on a regular basis, and I want to get back to recording Celestine of the Stars albums. I want to make things of quality. I want to, really just ramp up how well I'm doing. And I want that to be seen. I want that effort to be not only shown in the quality of my work, but also like in a pensive sense, where like people are like, hey, you know, I generally regard your music as, a true expression of self. Like I think this is really you, and I think it's good. I think it's good. I think it's worthy of existing. It's not just a pool of nothingness. So yeah, um, I guess I start my long list of thank yous. I'd like to thank my parents. They, I kind of keep them in the dark about stuff like this. I keep them in the dark about my creations because I don't want to be, I don't know, I don't want to be grandstanding or think that like what I do is, super important. I don't want to subject them to a copious amount of ridiculous writing and, overall whimsicality and stuff that's like really just kind of weird, because if they want to, they will, but overall they've just been supportive in general. So I would like to thank my parents. I'd like to thank my friend Jacob Andrews. He's one of my best friends. He's incredible. He's a marvel of a man, and he's just being here just as a person. He's just incredible, and I think that's extremely special to have someone like him, someone that's willing to constantly support me through every sore and every triumph. He's always there. He's been there for the worst of my doings to the best of my doings, and he'll continue to be here. Anytime I do something, he's always right there to back me up. And this goes insofar as my creation, but just also me as a person. I ebb and flow, and through the writing of this, I've ebbed and flowed. I've been depressed, I've been happy, I've been motivated, I've been unmotivated, um, I've gone through changes of heart. I've been exposed to new things that I want to try. I've been plucking. I've been stealing from poetry. I've been stealing from the Eddas. I've been stealing from classic literature. I've been stealing from what I know we can write about now. And I'm so fortunate to live in this time where you don't have to be afraid of writing anything. And just I'll be hanging out with Jacob, and I'll be like, "Hey, I wanna write about this. I wanna think about this." And he may have some reservations about whether he thinks something is a good idea or not a good idea, but he never outwardly is like, yeah, I think that's a great idea, or he's never like, hey, I think that's a terrible idea. No, he's like, he may swing one way or another, the oscillation of opinion, especially because there are a variety of stories and a lot of different plots. Um, but he always encourages me to give it a shot because he understands that my vision for the things I want to do can only be fulfilled by me in the way I want to do them. He's not the kind of if I were to have died in the making of this book, he's not the kind of person that would have tried to finish my work for me and publish it just so something's out there to commemorate me. And while some people may see that as a bad thing, for our friendship, that comes from a place of complete respect, and I completely admire that. And I'm completely happy to have him supporting me through this absolutely, you know, nonsensical idea where I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off for a long time because I would get these ideas for stories like, Summoner. I was like, it's a mystical title. I just gave it a title. And I'm like, oh, people in court summon people, where we have that. What if I do something with the legal system, or, I follow someone in the shoes of a I don't know, a judge or a former judge, and have that be like a plot point, just shit like that. Oriet, I had no idea what Oriet was gonna be about until I was thinking like, okay, I like historical writing. What do people like? There's gold obviously in the title, but where is gold found? I could have done Alaska, or I could have done um California. I could have done but I chose Siberia, and went through that. I could have done Rome. I could have done you know I could have done all these things, but I chose what I ended up choosing. And you know for that, he just tells me, hey man, figure it out. You're gonna be all right, and you can always restart. And there are times where I was writing something, I'm like, I'm not feeling this. I don't feel like this is going to make something, not even just worth reading. I don't think this is going to create something that is worthy of being a pillar. And like for me, like, what does this contribute, either rhetorically, uh in content? What does it contribute in thought, like stuff like this. And in asking questions like that, I have to really be honest and assert, like, is this really going to be a story that will resonate with me? Like, I may not remember all the characters' names, but I remember what happens in every single one of the stories because I know what they're about. And I don't just know what they're about in a sense of like because I wrote them, but like I know their morals that I take away from them, and I know where the moral ambiguity can shift. I know where even the bad character, not the bad characters, but like the characters that do bad things, I know where I resonate with them as characters because like they have a quality that someone could derive some good out of and use as a moral, like in Newfound, or like the Round Table of Widows. Like the woman, she's extremely, independent, she's powerful, and she, wants to exert that. And she's not a bad character. She means complete good in my eyes, and she's trying to figure out this world that has been decimated by disease. And, um, but she isn't careful enough, and she gets too comfortable, but she's not wrong because you can't live in that suspense all the time, right? And so that for me is kind of an animation of my own writing process. When I'm sitting back and I'm enjoying writing a story like the Round Table of Widows that I had so much fun writing, or I'm writing something that I don't like writing as much, like Steadfast, right? um when do I let that get when do I let my lighting when do I let my writing get too loose, create plot holes, create inconsistencies, create you know questions that maybe pose a threat to the integrity of my ability to create a believable plot, right? You're going to need to suspend your disbelief. I do a lot of realistic writing, so I you don't need to suspend your disbelief too much, but still there are points, like especially in Wareham, um like you need to suspend your disbelief. Like this guy turns into a dragon. It's definitely stuff to raise an eyebrow at, right? And that's just the way of it. And like all these questions that come with a lot of these stories, like antecessor, who's the narrator, what is this story about, is this a story, right? The last story, 10, right? Like, I'm coming to you as an author, yeah, but like you don't even need to see that. You don't need to see me, the author, coming to you. It can just be another character writing something epistolary, something, a lot of cognition. A lot of these stories are written as cognition in a journalistic sense, right? Like uh, pretty much informative logs. Like, I think a lot of the questions, or like a lot of the proclamative writing that we do in Western writing, like, doesn't consider the medium. Like, okay, you have a story, like, you're going to take anything. Beowulf, or I guess I want to use a first person. I'll use Great Expectations, one of the novels I really enjoyed a lot growing up. But Great Expectations, like you have these first person novels written, and they never consider, or I feel like there's not a lot of consideration. Like, of course you have the you know limits of knowledge, right? In a first person story, like that character, for the most part, unless you have some insight, or some mystical quality, stuff like that, right? You have the limits of their knowledge and their perception, right? The subjectivity, and that comes in both reliable and unreliable narrators. But, like, okay, these thoughts are in a place to be read and digested. How? In what way? How did these thoughts get here? Are these the thoughts? Are these the perceptions? Is it a journal entry? Is it stuff like that? Like what is writing? Like, in what medium is writing? Is it a state of consciousness? Is it a state of unconsciousness? Is it a state of liminality, subliminality? Is it a state of, I don't know, is it a state of illusion? Is it a state of, well, I guess for me, I promulgated earlier that it is a state of subjectivity. So, you are the author all the time because you only have your own circumstances. But is it also like subjective in that, like, you need to be the author in order to read a story and really get it? Obviously, not to interpret it, but to get that full panoramic picture, to smell the flowers, to touch the desk, to hear the bees, to, I don't know, to taste, the saliva in your mouth as the author, as you sit hunkered over your desk, handwriting, or, typing, or whatever. Like, you have this movie playing in your head, or at least I opine that every author has this, like screenwriters, like you're hunched over doing the act of you know germinating this movie in your head, and like when you go back through, you have those pictures flipping through your brain. And so, yeah, like these things all go into consideration. So because I feel like a lot of Western media doesn't have that quality in mind for me, I feel like I found a good balance or something that made me happy enough to be like, hey, this is acceptable, right? And yeah, so it's kind of in this weird place. And there are third person stories, but like it's kind of the same thing. These observations, from what place do they come? Because even in the third person, there's a presupposition that someone is on a hill in the distance looking at whatever that is being described, or looking from above, like a game of The Sims, or like a game of City Skylines, or a game of Hearts of Iron 4, and they're being like, this is what's happening. This is my authoritative proclamation that this is what's happening. This is me relaying as a courier information to you. This is truth. This is law. No, that's not my writing. If I come to you in the third person, because I can't describe everything, you're always missing something, right? So always question my writing too, right? And always question, don't question whether or not, like, basic facts, I guess, about, a story are true or not, but characters' motivations and things like that, even from a third person, always beckon criticism, right? And I fully welcome that, right? And Jacob enables that, to bring it full circle. Jacob enables that sort of thinking, that sort of ideation, to be like, give it a shot and, figure out what comes next. And yeah, so I also want to thank my friend Isa, Isa Titov. She's with me every step of the way. Her patience with me is something that I don't think any other person could ever have in their life, and I don't think it'll ever come again. And for that, I'm extremely curious as to why, but I'm extremely thankful for that, and I'd never forsake the integrity of our bond and our mutual understanding and appreciation for what we do for each other. And um, another good friend of mine, Iris Capurso, I'd like to thank Iris so very greatly for being one of my long-standing friends and always having fidelity to be present, to be attentive, to be active in understanding that I'm a person that likes to do things, and that, you know, she is also one of those people that wants to digest the unusuality of everything. I would like to thank my friend Kid Booker. Did I just say this already? I would like to thank my friend Kid Booker for being there for me in my times of need, being one of my connections to the outside world. Like I said, I live a very sessile life. Um, benthic in my home. I'm like a ooh, I need to think of a benthic animal. I need to think of a I'm like a frond, right? Charnia. I'm like a charnier, right? I'm benthic. I'm sessile. I don't get out. So he lets me be a remora every now and again. He gets to be the big shark. He's handsome. He's tall. He's funny. He's full of life. He's vibrant, and he gets to be a shark, and I get to be the remora underneath, just tagging along. And for that, I'm extremely thankful. I'm extremely humbled to be his friend, and I think he's a great guy. I would like to thank Valentino Venti, a musician, part of the band Tomorrow's Tessellations, which are no longer active. He was also one of my biggest creative influences, and just a really upstanding guy, a really upstanding creative guy, always looking for new stuff to intake and be like, hey, I've been listening to this lately. I've been exploring this, you know, and just I don't know, kind of one of the first people to like integrate me into the hippie culture. You know, like the Strokes, Steely Dan, you know, and you know he made a movie, you know, and that was super inspiring to hear him, you know, go through all this work to learn about, you know, this musician character, Dan Del Santo, and you know, amalgamate his music and just put it out there, and you know, just piece together this work that I have yet to see it, but excuse me, I have yet to see it, but like just that dedication is so real and so raw. It's so authentic, and I admire that in infinitely. Right. I'd like to thank all my professors for sure. My literature professors, my science professors, my even my maths professors. Um, you know, the people I interact with in the university life every day. They're super supportive and they're all so interesting. These people I know they have books of their own. They're super accomplished. They're not, you know, they don't care about fame. They don't care about these are real people doing real shit that matters, right? They are putting their heart and soul into everything. So many of them outside of being professors or prolific musicians, you know, they have quirky interests. They have quirky ways of talking. You know, they have their own thoughts and ideas. They come from a place of authority on the things they do. And that is insane that they have that confidence, but they also have the backing to do that, to be like, I am an authority figure on this. I don't think this is right. I think this is right. I think, you know, I think we should look into this more. I want to research this. This is my life's work. That's awesome. That's fucking amazing, right? So, yeah, it's just an incredible thing to know all these great people. Um, I would like to I'd like to thank Willow Sandusky. Um, she was we don't really talk anymore, but um, she was one of my only university friends, and that was it's very nice to have someone who can um have your back and be a human around you, and I don't know, take away the shame, take away the, you know, the skittishness. It's an incredibly intimate thing, and it's an incredibly important thing to have that enabling, you know, that enabling factor. And she loves botany, she loves the environment, and I think that we need more people taking care of this planet, this amazing, beautiful planet, of which has been host to us and all life for billions of years. Well, not the us part. That's you know, million, 100,000s, you know, whatever, right? Um, but yeah, that's just great, you know, just to have someone like her in the background as someone that was motivating me and just always embracing the eclectic side of me, and just really encouraging me, and really she helped me get through some shit at the university when I had been doubting myself. So there's that. I would like to thank the author Madison Perry. I read his book, the first adult novel, the first modern adult novel I ever read was a book called Available by Madison Perry. And he yeah, he introduced me to a lot of things. He introduced me to the world of sex. He introduced me to the world of drugs. He not this makes him sound like a bad influence, but I don't think these things are bad. I think, you know, this guy writing about going to Burning Man, having sex with different women, having, you know, falling in love with a man, you know, listening to Bill Withers. My introduction to Bill Withers was through this book, right? Talking about Bill Withers, I'm like, I'll check that out. And yeah, like this author, and I reached out to him when I had been dating my one ex-girlfriend. Great girl, by the way. Um, when I had been, you know, in this period where like I was like, I want to reach out. I want to say something to him. And I read this novel when I was probably, oh God, I don't even know. I had to have been like not the age to be having sex, I promise. No, I was probably 14 or 15 when I read it for the first time. And like I was just so moved by its candor, and like if I could say anything to Madison Perry, you know, like the Shakespeare's, like the works like Beowulf, like the great playwrights, like the great screenwriters, like the things, you know, that inspire me to make music, to make writing, to make art, like, you know, my geometric abstract bullshit. The things that inspired me to do that, like he's there, no question. Um and that's just great. And I think that like my exposition to the world of just crazy shit, and like that, because that was one of the things that opened my eyes, like outside of the small town in which I live, and outside of, this like isolated, my hands over the crystal ball of the globe where I look at things like culture like through a microscope. I look at things like culture and language in this microscope. Like I'm like, these are real things that happen. I went to Rochester, New York. I had a great time. You know, and like something like that and reading available are in the same vein, because they made me realize how real the world is. How like, and I was a young man reading these things. I think I might have had my first kiss at this point, but I had no idea what the future would hold for me. And like I kept these things as comforts when I was growing up, and they it taught me that it was okay to be open, it was okay to be emotional, it was okay to like Bill Withers, it was okay to um really give a shit about the things around, and it's okay to take things at a time. Like he didn't date for a while. He had some rampant sex. He did some rampant drugs. And, am I so different? I don't have rampant sex. I'm not as handsome. But, like, you know, I'm not opposed to things like drug culture. They don't bother me. Like, I don't want to be addicted to drugs, but, you know, what I mean to say is that I love experimenting. I'm such an exhibitionist. I love to try new things, and this is proof. This is my LSD here. I wrote a book. That's my LSD, right? And I got to use my LSD trip to create images and show you guys who I am, and I'm extremely thankful for that. Couple quick closing thank yous. I'd like to thank my friend Mackenzie Mahoney. I'd like to thank my friend Ren Alexander. I'd like to thank I don't know, the people that see me at my local convenience store pretty much every other day. Um, because they're my connection. They are also one of my few connections to the outside world. I'd like to thank all the people I've ever worked with, in a formal work setting, because yes, they are my connection to the world, but they also, they help iron me out. They help keep me straight. They help me, they help keep me humble, and that's extremely important. I'd like to thank so many bands and authors. I'd like to thank so many screenwriters too. I'd like to thank Joy Division, Smashing Pumpkins, Radiohead, Tool, Mick Turner, uh, Frank Zappa. Did I say New Order already? Probably New Order. Um, I'd like to thank Horse Jumper of Love. I'd like to thank Asher Mazora, Aftermath of the Lonely. I'd like to thank November and July. I'd like to thank the Tony so far. I would like to thank I'd like to thank Metallica. I'd like to thank Anthrax. I'd like to thank Kendrick Lamar. I'd like to thank Echo 2K. I'd like to thank Blade. I'd like to thank John Williams, the guitar player and the composer. I'd like to thank Joe Pass. I'd like to thank Jim Croce. I'd like to thank Bob Dylan. I'd like to thank all these people. Christopher Nolan. Um, fucking William Shakespeare. Mario Pei. Oh my god, how could I forget? Thank you, Mario Pei. I wish he were still alive to hear this. Douglas Fairbanks Jr. The actor that wrote a book I read. Dr. Oppenheimer. I would like to thank Dr. Oppenheimer. I'd like to thank um I can't remember their names off the top of my head, but I'd like to thank the people that wrote American Prometheus too, because that book and the movie Oppenheimer have had a tremendous impact on me. I'd like to thank archivists. I would like to thank illustrators. I'd like to thank editors. I'd like to thank people that are randomly clicking on YouTube. I'd like to thank the people in my life. I'd like to thank the people out of my life. I'd like to thank the people that love me. I'd like to thank the people that hate me. I'd like to thank the people that aren't quite sure yet. And I would not like to thank the people that are neutral. Because you should have opinions about shit. Do something. Be someone. You know? All these people that rag on people that go to bars every day. No, I'm not one of these people. But at least they know who they are. Their volition. They know how to have a good time, and that's their life, right? Perhaps not the most commendable of living methods, but they have that volition to not be neutral, and there is no pride in neutrality. And you know, I could have no pride, and I don't have pride in writing a book, but I could have no I could have no joy. I could have nothing to derive out of being like, yeah, I was thinking about writing a book. You know how long I've been thinking about writing a book? You know how long I've been thinking about doing things? A long fucking time. And to have the opportunity to do that for you, and to have the chance to evoke language, to evoke ideas, to evoke, you know, various parts of myself, it's incredible. It's an incredible honor. So, thank you for listening. I am Evan. You can listen to the album. You can read the book. You can choose to not do either of those things. You can watch my other videos. You can listen to my old music. You can read my other short stories. I get the website running up and again, but this is who I am. This is hardly the last time you'll hear from me. This is hardly the last time anything will be of anything, right? And I appreciate that, I appreciate that opportunity. So, thank you. And, of course, peace. Peace out. Stay safe. Rock and roll. Live on. Play that minor major 7 chord. If you play that like a minor major 7 chord, if you go up a half step and you play a dominant 7 chord, that's pretty good resolution, I think. Is it? Maybe. I don't know. Yeah. Expect more sheet music, expect more albums, expect more books, maybe.